Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the Path to Liberty. This is the Fast Friday edition of the show for August 7th, 2020. And on this episode, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to share with you the top 3 reasons why I personally support Bitcoin and other crypto projects as potentially powerful tools to support liberty in the face of a constantly growing predatory government. First of all, before getting to that, my name is Michael Bolden. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. Our show homepage is where you want to get started. That's 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. It's long, all spelled out. 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. That's where you're going to find the video versions, the audio only podcast edition, all the different platforms we're on, all of the previous episodes, and in individual episodes, I include a bunch of links for you to read, watch, listen, learn more, because I'm really just scratching the surface in each episode, and it's a good idea to pick up on that. I hope if you find things interesting, there's going to be a lot of links for you to check out. And you can even find ways to support us, like our membership program, which starts out as little as $2 a month. And we make it go a long, long way in support of the Constitution and liberty. That's again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. Look, I couldn't be more grateful for you spending some of your time with me today, but since it's the Fast Friday edition, I promise to not take up too much of your time. Let's see if I can get this done in the next 10 to 15 minutes. I want to get right to this. Number one, the number one reason why I support Bitcoin and other crypto projects is competition. And I'm talking about currency competition. On Wednesday, I did an episode that touched on this, I think pretty heavily, actually more than touched on it. Status report, end the Fed from the bottom up. And what we're really focused on a state, local, and individual level is encouraging people to use currencies, use something outside of the Federal Reserve System, whether that's gold or silver, or it's Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, whatever it may be, just something that isn't controlled by the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government. I cited Ron Paul from a speech in 2011 when he said, and he's talking about the problems that we face economically, boom, bust, inflation, and the like. He says, the only way to counteract this problem is to break the government monopoly on the issuance of money. He's talking about needing competition. And if we fast forward to last summer, July 2019, Ron Paul was back on CNBC and he said, and this is from Bitcoin.com, reporting on this, he says, quote, "I'm all for cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology because I like competing currencies." So it's the same philosophical basis, the same philosophical foundation. He just wants people to use things that are not Federal Reserve notes. And I'm fully on board with that as well. That doesn't mean that they're all ready for prime time out there either, though. I can tell you that. Doesn't necessarily mean that. We've used on our website various plugins for our shopping cart, and there are some that aren't that good. We found one that's really actually very consistent, secure, stable from a company called Coinbase. It's called Coinbase Commerce. So when you're on shop.10thamendmentcenter.com, if you're getting a membership or a book or a DVD, whatever it may be, you can actually pay, in your checkout through some of the major cryptocurrencies. And you can see here on our donate page, the Coinbase thing pops up and you've got Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, DAI, Ether, Litecoin, USDC. So this is actually encouraging commerce. And that's why I like how that they call it Coinbase Commerce at least. But you can actually do run a business based on cryptocurrency. Now, it's going to take the market actually determining that that's really what they want to do for it to be viable financially, but I certainly want to make sure that we have that out there. So number one is currency competition, because we want to practice what we preach. Number two is confiscation resistance. And I think a lot of people in the crypto sphere, in that space, would call this something different. I don't normally hear this out there, but this is my view on it. And this is from an article just a couple of months ago in June of 2020 over at Forbes. And this is a quote from Nathaniel Whitmore. He says, "One of the most important tools in the authoritarian toolkit is the ability to freeze the funding of legitimate political dissent." And whether you call it legitimate or not, I think as soon as you say whether something is right or wrong, legitimate, illegitimate, and that's maybe where Nathaniel makes a bit of a mistake there. As soon as you say that, then someone is going to make a determination of what is legitimate dissent, what can be said, what is legal speech. And you've got things like the Patriot Act that cause a lot of problems in the financial industry for this, because government could put a lot of pressure on financial institutions and say, well, now you're no longer able to do business. He goes a little further here. He says, by separating the infrastructure of money from the infrastructure of state power, Bitcoin makes it that much harder for this type of politically motivated confiscation. Now, mind you, there has been some confiscation done in the past. For example, the FDR actually did that executive order, I think it was 6102, and that was in April of 1933, where they confiscated gold. So it's really important to actually recognize that government will take stuff when they can. So confiscation resistance is incredibly important. I actually will include a link to that episode. I covered that in April of this year. It was April 5th, 1933 that happened, and I covered it on April 3rd. I will link to that in the show notes. Another episode that I did this week called Airport Robbery was talking about how federal agencies have basically been ripping people off at airports, travelers, to the tune of billions of dollars, $2 billion plus over one study period. It's certainly larger than that. And $500 million of that, people had their money stolen through civil asset forfeiture by government, DHS, etc., because they didn't have the right paperwork. And that's because if you're carrying money, government has a very easy way to get their hands on it. Even if you have it in a bank, they have a very easy way to get their hands on it if they want it. It's not as easy as if you're carrying it. But I think cryptocurrency can be a solution to this. And I know someone commented on that episode saying Bitcoin specifically is a solution. I'm not certain which one will be. And I'm sure that's a very heated discussion in some sectors. I'm sure people will be correcting me all around on which one's a solution and everything else isn't, of course. But that's a side discussion. When you actually own cryptocurrency, when you have a crypto, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, whatever it may be, and this is another article from Bitcoin.com, you keep it in an electronic wallet, in a wallet. It's online. There are two versions. There's a custodial, two general categories. There's a custodial wallet and there's a non-custodial. This is how they describe them. Custodial wallets are third parties such as exchanges and brokerage services. These services have control over your coins. So it's like basically putting it in a cryptocurrency bank. And maybe you trust the business to be good, but I don't think there's too many businesses, especially here in the States, where if government puts pressure on them to say, hand this over to us, that they won't. A non-custodial wallet, on the other hand, they give users 100% control by providing owners with the private keys. They go further in this article. People who store digital assets with a third party need to understand that they are not 100% in control of their cryptocurrency. So it's not only just having the crypto, but understanding how you store it, how you access it. If you allow a third party to do it, then you have a single point of failure, or maybe not single, but closer to that, where government could put pressure on them and take over and confiscate. So confiscation resistance is incredibly important. Here in a non-custodial wallet, they write, their services are platforms that allow users to possess their private keys. The private keys are how you access your coins. Not your keys, not your coins is a very common phrase in that community. The application they write will either give you a file or have you write down a mnemonic phrase that can consist of 12 to 24 random words. It's not a password. It's not a pass key, a pass phrase. It's 12 to 24 random words. And if you store them in a place that isn't secure, someone's going to be able to hack and get access. If you write it down, someone can search your home and get access. The safest place is in your memory, because unless you tell someone, no one will ever be able to get access to that. Well, at least under the technology of today. So confiscation resistance is number 2 and very important to me. Number 3, I think, is what a lot of people might call number 2, but I separate them, and hopefully it'll make sense why. Number 3 is censorship resistance. And here from Library, we actually post all of our videos. The Library is a video platform, a competition to a number of the major ones like YouTube, Facebook, and elsewhere. And we post the archive of this show every time on Library, lbry.tv. It's run by a lot of really good liberty-minded people, including this guy, Jeremy Kaufman, who wrote on the Library blog, "What is censorship resistance and why does it matter?" And he put it this way: it's the degree, censorship resistance is the degree to which a system is tamper-proof. That is, a censorship-resistant system means a third party cannot modify or remove content created by someone else. We know this is a serious concern for a lot of people. You post something, you share something, it's text or video, whatever it may be, and someone says, we don't want that there. Now, a lot of people are primarily concerned about platforms doing this, but my greatest concern is government. And even if platforms are setting the precedent, I think government really likes this, and government has been pressuring those platforms behind the scenes for a long time. So this is a way to fight back against that. And Library is a really good platform as far as being able to do this with video. Going further, Jeremy writes this: "So when speaking of censorship resistance with regards to Library, we are speaking about how challenging it is to modify or remove content from the Library network without permission from the publisher." So if you publish a video there and you want it to stay, it's almost certainly going to stay. And Jeremy puts it this way. He says, we believe Library to be the most censorship-resistant system to ever exist for the purposes of publishing digital content. And they're really still in their infancy, and I know they are working to make it more censorship resistant. Now, one key thing, it's not censorship proof. Censorship resistant is really what we're talking about here. And it's much, like miles and miles different between a centralized platform like YouTube or somebody else who can just unilaterally say this is gone versus one of these decentralized systems. And I talk about this pretty regularly, well, at least from time to time, in kind of a networking term. If you have a computer network, whether for a business or for the public, and you actually have it run on just one computer, we'd call that a single point of failure. It's very easy to have problems then. If the computer needs updating or the server needs updating and you have to shut it down or restart it, then everybody else is gone. If something breaks, everybody's gone. If the power goes out, somebody shuts that power off, like the LA mayor, for example. They decide to shut that power off, it's done. The network is gone. Or government at whatever level could easily pressure an operator to say, no, we're going to give you the time of your life that you can never even dream of if you don't kick this person off. So a single point of failure is really problematic. And that's why cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, I think primarily, is really the leader on this. Bitcoin, BTC, others are as well, but that's kind of the big one, are decentralized. Instead of having to have a single attack point, you need dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and it becomes virtually impossible. I saw something recently, and they call, well, if you want to try to take over one of these networks, they call it a 51% attack. For example, if you want a 51% attack Bitcoin BTC for 1 hour, it's going to cost you more than $500,000 for 1 hour. And you're not going to get a lot done by doing that either. So if someone wants to come for my $500 and they've got to spend $500,000, they're just never going to do it. So for a lot of average people, this is really almost censorship. It's confiscation proof and censorship proof in that situation. But we're not just talking about video platforms, because this can also be done for websites. You have to get a domain name if you run a website, and that's run by a registrar, and those are generally centralized, and people can get kicked off of those very easily. We've seen a number of places have that happen. But there's a company called Unstoppable Domain Names, Unstoppable Domains, called unstoppabledomains.com, where they have blockchain domain names that are decentralized. And so the hosting of the domain name itself is almost censorship resistant, or it's building really strong censorship resistance. So that's an important tool. But I'm also learning that there are new tools through this same company, I believe, where you can host at least a rudimentary static website. And I'm kind of exploring to see where we can go with this with the 10th Amendment Center. You can put a static website on the Ethereum blockchain. Maybe we can do a weekly update and just post whatever new articles. I'm not sure how that's going to play out or what it costs, But the idea of being able to have the content out there, even if it's harder to access or you only have to use the Opera browser, you have to use an add-on or something, I think it's very important for organizations like 10th Amendment Center, or really anybody who believes in privacy, individual sovereignty, for example, who oppose government or centralized control, to really start looking in this direction. And those are really my top three. So 1 is currency competition. 2 is confiscation resistance. 3 is censorship resistance. And I would really think there's a kind of a bonus as well, because as we're talking about decentralization, people in this community, in the cryptocurrency community, in the Bitcoin community, they recognize decentralization regarding money to be incredibly important. And I think from there, whether it's money or video hosting or website hosting, they see the benefits of this. They see the dangers of centralization. And I think it isn't too big of a leap to educate people that centralization of power in the hands of government is bad on just about every single issue under the sun. Thomas Jefferson, for example, he warned us about this. This was many times. Let me pull up, that's Unstoppable Domains. Here's Thomas Jefferson, a quote where he wrote to Joseph C. Cabell in February of 1816. He put it this way: "What has destroyed liberty in every government which has ever existed? The generalizing and concentrating of all cares and power into one body." And that's why he considered the 10th Amendment the foundation of the Constitution, because that foundation is decentralization through federalism. And most of the important things, all the important issues, other than those few that were delegated to that central government, are decentralized, left to the people of the several states to determine as they see fit. Anyways, I hope you guys found this interesting, as educational and as fun to watch as I thought it was fun to share with you today. It's a different type of an episode than I normally do, but I think it's important to really start thinking about tools to protect ourselves. The reason I thought of this is not only because I read about crypto a lot, and I'm always thinking about how other websites or individuals are getting deplatformed. What can I do to protect the work that we've built here for so many years? But I also thought of it in response to reading the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Surveillance Self-Defense Guide. Like, how can we defend ourselves without relying on other people? That's the idea of individual sovereignty. Anyways, again, I hope you found this interesting and educational. More importantly than anything, I hope you learned something. If you support what we're doing, hit that like button, subscribe, get notifications. Reviews on iTunes and elsewhere are really helping out a great deal. And if you want to pitch in and support us financially, you can do that for as little as $2 US fiat dollars per month. That's 10thamendmentcenter.com/members, all spelled out, 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Thank you again for being here with me today. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you next week here on the Path to Liberty.